All right. I'm just gonna. I'll edit this part out. All right.
I think you leave it.
Or maybe we leave it and show some behind the scenes because you said, "All right, I'm ready," and then you proceeded to adjust stuff behind your camera.
Yeah.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Beardzone Sports Talk. My name is David. I got Carlos. I got Scooter, and today we are going to be breaking down everything college football. We're going to be talking about the games that were last weekend and the games that are going to be coming up this weekend. Some games that you definitely want to get circled on your calendar this Saturday. But before we get into it, definitely go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. That is the best way to support us here as we grow this college season. Fellas, I want to get right into this because there's definitely some teams and coaches that need to have a good week of football. And the one that is screaming loudest to me right now is the one that gets the most media attention, and that's the Colorado with Deion Sanders. They've not looked good. And with everything that's happened this offseason, with them getting all the transfers, to Colorado, all the hype was there, and they're just not putting it together on the field. Shedeur was sacked. Shedeur was sacked 6 times last week against Nebraska, and this defense is looking. I think it looked worse last week than it did the week before. So this week they have Colorado State. It is an in-state rival game. They should win, but I don't know. What do they need to do this week to try and get this program back on track and where Deion wants it to be?
Man, if I could look at that game for Nebraska and Colorado, Nebraska looked very clean. Let's be honest. On both sides of the ball, they were very clean. Riola was the top recruit coming into college football, and he proved it. He's Mahomes Jr. in look-alike form. Still polishing to be done there, but what we saw was the front seven and both sides of the ball just sucked for Colorado. Defensively, they couldn't stop anything. It was kind of bad. Seeing Warren Sapp as their defensive line coach for Colorado, and just no pressure whatsoever. And Shedeur kind of out of pocket with how many times did Riola get hit versus him, and kind of comment. Should he have said it? Probably not, but it was not inaccurate by any means. Shedeur got destroyed, and Riola barely got touched. The offensive line for Colorado, when you scare your prospects and your recruits off by the culture that you bring, you kind of eat it every once in a while, right? Nebraska came to win. Let's be honest here. Colorado is a lot of hype. They have a lot of offense, but they couldn't produce anything because they couldn't stop the pass rush. Like, you can't tell me you're a top-rated team when you're losing to unranked opponents and when you should win. I like Coach Prime and what he brings to that culture for the Colorado Buffaloes, but, at the end of the day, they're not a complete team. They're not even synced. It seems very discombobulated, and I really think Colorado is going to bomb this year because what we saw this past week was not a good team at all.
No, and Carlos, I think that you mentioned a couple weeks ago where when a head coach comes into a program and he has to do what Deion is having to do right now with Colorado, you said give it 3 years. Well, this is his second year, so shouldn't we be starting to see the uptick? Or is this the year where they continue to have, kind of flatline?
No, you don't, because if you look at the Hurricanes with Cristobal in his second year, they had another decline, and then now they're up on their uptick. But the problem Deion's going to have there, last year Colorado was dead last in rushing the football. They only averaged 67 yards a game. They replaced all 5 linemen. They went out, they recruited well. They got the number 1 offensive tackle, and they brought in some guys. They're dead last again. and they're only averaging 35 yards a game. So you can't win in football in any state if you don't run the ball. And if you can't run the ball, you better really be really good at pass blocking, and they're 100% not. But I don't see Prime turning around Colorado. Colorado's never been that program. There's just nothing to entice. They don't have the money to really compete, even though it's a bigger school in a sense. But I really think I think once his Travis Hunter, it's weird to say your two best players. I think once they leave, I think then he can see some growth. I don't like the culture of his son, where you can be truthful about your team, but you got to be careful how you word it in public. Things of Dion has ordered the Colorado State band not to play the fight song when Sanders scores a touchdown, to play his favorite rap song. So little things like that, to me, that's not college football. You play the fight song. It's about traditions and that school program, and he just doesn't run it that way. And I don't know if that recipe is for success. Stephen A. Smith mentioned about him going to like the SEC, where he could recruit, he'd have the money backing, and that he's a good coach. Honestly, I don't know if he's a good coach. He did well at Jackson State, but he definitely had talent that was competitive with that brand of football. So he's just not. I don't think year 3 is going to do it. They're not recruiting at that high. Although Cristobal, even in his time, was still putting in top 10 recruiting, plus hitting the portal and being a top 5 portal guy. So he was able to do both. So I just don't see it for Colorado. They got Colorado State this weekend. I think you know what? I don't know if they win, because last year that was a shootout and it went down to the end. So I don't think it's going to be a good football team. I think at some point with Shakira, there, whatever his name is, that at some point you have to wonder, because he is a pro prospect with Hunter. Does he play the whole season? Do you take the chance of getting hurt? That O-line's going to put him in some bad situation. But Nebraska was good. They were the 11th ranked defense last year. They're just as good this year. It's a top 10 defense in the country. Their offense is good. That's a tough team to go against, especially, their defense it's good. Nebraska's going to make some waves this year.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I get it. You're Deion Sanders. You're a Hall of Famer. There's no argument about that. But that was on the pro level. You're not a Hall of Fame coach. You're a Hall of Fame NFL player. And yeah, he took Jackson State. He elevated them. But again, he had, just like what you said, Carlos, he had that talent that the guys can clearly play on the next level and compete with these guys now. And I don't know. I don't like the whole atmosphere that he's bringing. Like, win some games first, and then if you win games, yeah, do the extra stuff. But you're doing all the extra stuff now before you're winning games, and I don't like it. I'm a big Deion Sanders fan, but I'm beginning to become a Deion Sanders hater, because I really don't like everything that he's doing there. Win some games. Like, seriously, win some games. You went to Colorado, you scared everyone off. You told people all of this nonsense and everything else like that. You have all this media attention, and for what? So that way we can see you get your ass kicked every Saturday? Like, we don't want to see that. So I don't know. But another coach that I feel like he might be on the hot seat is the guy who is having to face the South Carolina Gamecocks this week, and that's Brian Kelly with the LSU Tigers. They aren't looking too good this year, and I wouldn't say that this is a guaranteed win this week either. They have to go into into the Gamecock Stadium, and that fan base always brings it, and they shot themselves in the foot last weekend. We saw it. We saw the interview, the post game interview with Brian Kelly. He was angry. They 100% could have won that game last week, but they beat themselves with stupid penalties and just not executing on the plays that they needed to execute. Can the LSU Tigers win this week? And if they don't, how many more weeks are we going to see Brian Kelly as the head coach?
Well, he's
Did you
definitely
see
going to
him?
remain the head coach. The buyout is too big. So
Okay.
he's going to stay there. It is a big game for them. I don't think South Carolina, they're 2-0. I mean, it's so hard in the beginning of the season because a lot of teams don't play anybody, and the 2-0 record is not probably the true what that team is. It will be interesting. I can tell you they don't win. They need to get a medal podium because Kelly is going to destroy it because of his last press conference, he was pretty mad. But it has to be probably one of the most frustrating things for a coach to have a talented team that is undisciplined and making stupid mistakes. And it's got to be so frustrating for him. So, but the fish stinks from the head down. So, I mean, it is his team, and he's supposed to be instilling this. So yeah, I think they're in a must win, man. This could be, you're in the SEC. You gotta win the games you're supposed to win. And they haven't been doing that.
Undisciplined. That's a very good word to use there, Carlos. And Brian Kelly sucks. He's a great coach. I give him that, but he's not a leader. If you watch the transition from Saban to DeBoer in Alabama, it's completely undisciplined as well. We watched the USF Alabama game, and we were like, oh, Alabama's not the same team at all. And that score does not reflect the actual game. LSU is not a complete team. They're not a complete set of leaders. And I honestly think they lose to South Carolina. And now South Carolina may have not had the top game. So we watched FSU lose to Boston College and Georgia Tech right off the bat. So anything is possible in the college football world. I think Brian Kelly is the most overrated coach in college football. I think he's a child. I'll say it to his face. I don't care. When you start losing your temper on the national stage and you choke every single time, let's take a look at Notre Dame going to the national championship game, choke. Then he cried and went to LSU, choked. Again, last year with Jaden Daniels and everything else they have with that team. And he's going to choke again this year, obviously, because he's already lost again. So, and the SEC West specifically is very strong in teams. Look at Mizzou, Alabama, A&M kind of shows up every once in a while. And then you got Ole Miss. And then you got to fight Georgia or Tennessee, because we know UF's not a challenge on the east side. So it's either Tennessee or Georgia. And I don't think LSU can compete with either of them either. If you're Brian Kelly, you're looking at your team and going, man up and play some ball. But you're also looking at your coaching staff and yourself and looking in the mirror going, okay, well, what do I need to do to change this stuff? Because clearly it's not working. It's not reading. You're not reaching the men on this team. And to create actual winners, you need to create men. And he's got a bunch of boys on that team and a lot of undisciplined dudes. And he is very undisciplined too. LSU's losing this week, man.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if they lost. And I forgot about the buyout for Brian Kelly. So, yeah, he might not be, departing that organization anytime soon. But, gosh, that's a high price tag for someone who is, putting out the productivity that he is putting out right now. Let's go to another organization that I feel like is, I mean, what do? Like they went from going undefeated last year to, just having a heartbreaking ending to the season because their quarterbacks went down with an injury, and now they have, this season, and they're supposed to have the next guy up. And it's not, and that's DJU and the FSU Seminoles. Mike Norvell. What do we do? They play Memphis this week. They should win, right? But on the flip side, Memphis has a very high-powered offense. We have seen FSU's defense struggle this entire year with stopping offenses and with tackling. And we have definitely seen the offensive side of FSU struggle to put up points. So if it's going to be a shootout, I put my money on Memphis. What's going to happen this weekend and what's going to happen in the future? What do they need to do? What do you think is the proper steps after this week if they come away and they leave this week 0-3.
Honestly, Norval's got to start winning games. Like, I understand Florida, the state in general. You have to win or you're going to get fired. It's just the name of the game. It's all like Texas. It's all like California, Ohio, the football states, right? And then you got DJU, who can't seem to hit the broadside of an entire state. He's got to be up there with looking like Daniel Jones as compared to the NFL. So, or Caleb Williams in week 1, completely overrated. So, if you were to take
Damn.
DJU down and give the other dudes a chance, I don't even care who he is, bench DJU. He can't hit anybody. He can barely make a lollipop in front of his face. So, and start running the ball. Just run the freaking ball. You got destroyed by the run game 2 weeks in a row. So take a learning lesson and just run the ball. You have plenty of talent. Their freshman looks like a freak of nature linebacker. Just give him the ball. I think he's Davis, number 3. The dude's just huge. Just hand him the ball and say, run north and south. Just run north, bro. Just double it up, pull a tackle, pull a guard, and just run it. Run a trap play, run an ISO, just run the ball until your quarterback can hit a slant route or a post or an easy out route. You can't even hit an out route in D1 football, sit on the bench because you're no use to that coach, you're no use to that team. They're going to get their lead wide receiver back. I can't remember his name right now, but Memphis is not going to turn the throttle off. They've never done that in the past probably 7 years or so. Especially as a USF fan, watching Memphis' offense, oh my God, dang it, man. Like, they never turn it off. And FSU's defense is plain sloppy. They don't wrap up the tackles. They go for the big hit, and they really don't hit that hard. Like, you remember traditional FSU offense or defense and Miami defense, Florida defense, and they are hard hitters. And you watch this year's defense with FSU, and they're just like chip on the shoulder. Like, that's not going to work. You got to wrap up. It's like a completely different team. Honestly, if I don't know what Norville's payout is, but you lose to Memphis, especially at home, 0-3 to the season. I don't know about you guys, but I take the hit.
I'm all
you going, son?
I'm all for them going 0-3 for sure.
For sure.
This will be a good test for the mental toughness of FSU because if they get down early in this game, and Memphis is, I'm sure they're okay with kicking a man when he's down, but it will definitely test that psyche, especially DJ's. Like the last game against Boston College, when you looked at the sidelines and they panned over to him, and he just had that glare of like, I don't know, he just no answers. So if Memphis gets up early, and FSU struggling, I don't know. We're going to see how mentally strong they are because in football, you got to be able to go with the ups and downs. And I don't know. I don't know if he is. Like FSU is going to have to come out. And they're going to have to. They're going to have to put it on Memphis. I just don't see if they get down 14-17. I don't know. They could be 0-3, and then I mean, technically, I think they're mathematically out of the playoffs, so they can't make it. But right now, you're playing for pride. You still got Florida and Miami coming up, rival games. Man, yeah, they're going to see how tough they are mentally this week.
It's definitely going to be a good test for them, but it shouldn't be like this. If you were to state it to any FSU fan at the beginning of the season and be like, hey, you have Georgia Tech, Boston College, and Memphis, you guys might go 0-3.
3-0.
Yeah, exactly.
3-0.
You think 3-0 automatically, especially coming off of what last year was. Now, I understand that they lost a lot of players, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, you can't control that. I mean, those guys went off and, now are in the pros where they deserve to be. But it's gonna be very interesting. And if you're an FSU fan, you didn't see this coming. I don't think anyone saw this coming. So hopefully they can come out with a win this weekend. but I don't know. I almost kind of want to put my money on Memphis just because I don't like the quarterback. Anything that I've seen from him, I just don't like. And Scooter, you said it earlier, talking about those short out routes. That's where NFL quarterbacks make their money. Like if you like that's where you look at if you when they're at the combine, they look at those out routes. If you can hit those receivers, going towards the sideline because that's kind of the bread and butter of a lot of offenses in the NFL. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But let's move on to some games that we are going to be having on Saturday. Let's kick it off where we're talking about Florida, um, the Florida Gators versus the Texas A&M Aggies. This is going to be. I don't think Mintz is going to get the starting gig this game. I still think he's out with the concussion protocol. So you have DJ Lagway gets a start, and he looked good against Miami. He had definitely some bursts. He brought new energy to this. The Aggies they got upset a couple weeks ago with Notre Dame. So, I mean, I don't know. Can they win this week? What are you guys looking for this week with this matchup?
It's an interesting matchup for sure. I think Lagway changes the. I saw this Florida Gator fan say, "We're going 11-0 national championship." And I was like, "Hold on, buddy, hold on. Let's
Whoa,
not get
whoa,
crazy,
whoa.
okay?" It was Samford,
Yeah.
but he's a talent. He doesn't seem to get phased, like you said. He came in the Miami game. He didn't look rattled. He's talented, but he will get tested against Texas A&M. Now you're playing an SEC team that's got players. You're going to see a speed difference than he saw last week. I mean, he balled out last week. It's an interesting game, especially for both teams because they both need a win. Florida needs it because they got the tough schedule. Texas A&M needs it because they just need a boost, man. Ever since the Jimbo Fisher $30 million NIL deals that they threw out and it all blew up in their face, they need it. So both teams really need a win here. Man, I don't know how to pick this one. I want to give it to Florida because they're at home, but I don't know. I really don't know on this one.
Well, Florida did lose pretty handedly to Miami at home when they played an actual talented team. You got a new coaching setup with A&M. You don't with UF. You have new quarterbacks, kind of with A&M, sophomore Wegman. And he kind of struggled against Notre Dame, which is kind of the real test for him right off the bat. Notre Dame struggled as we saw last week with Notre Dame. So A&M, it's hard to really side with them hard outside of the John Manziel and Mike Evans era, right? It's just hard because they had such a run, and then they went back to their typical Aggie way of, do they win or do they choke? Is this the fourth quarter where the Aggies are up by 30 points and we can go home and drink our beer? Or is this the Aggies where they're giving up another 21 points in the fourth quarter and they're losing? Is this the UF team where they use their talent and just hope for the best? Or is this the UF team where they rely on their coaching and the home field advantage and hope for a win? I think Lagway is an absolute stellar dude. He's a 5-star recruit, number one dual threat guy coming out of high school. I think he's like 230 pounds or something crazy, 6 something. Absolute beast. He reminds me of Cam Newton and the talent that he had from UF to Auburn, and it was just a freak of nature on the field, man. I think UF has a better future with Lagway, to be honest with you. Napier can buff up his defense in that defensive scheme because A&M, I think wide receiver wise, is a little better. They're bigger. I don't think they're faster, but they're bigger, and I think they have better hands of route tree. I think Wegman needs to excel as a passer and on the play action side. A&M traditionally does very well with the run game and play action. You can watch any of their tape from 15 years ago to now. It's all play action based. And when they succeed, Florida would need more RPO with the dual threat. And defensively, it's either going to be tight, like UF holding. I could see it go two ways. UF can absolutely blow them out because their defense is stellar, or it's a tight game. I would like to vote for UF playing at home, but something's telling me that the freshman kind of gets put in his place. Right, you have your up game with your low grade team in Stanford, and then you have A&M, and I think A&M absolutely needs a win. If they don't get a win here, it's going to look real rough for them going down the street. Everything's telling me UF, but the Aggies have a way of just ruining people's seasons, man. They just do. They either ruin their own season or everyone else's season. There's no in between.
Yeah, it should be an interesting game. I like Florida. I think I'm gonna give it to the freshman. I liked what I saw when he came out, and played against Miami. Last week obviously was a win, but I mean, good for you, I guess, but you should. So
Man, he looked strong.
No, he
against
did.
Miami.
And so and I like the energy that he brought, especially in the Miami game. They were down. They knew that the game was over. But when he came into the game, that offense looked, kind of revitalized. They had a little bit more pep into their step, and they played again with some pride, because the game was over with at that point. So, but let's move on to another game. We actually touch base on this team, Notre Dame. They go in and they play Purdue. Notre Dame upsetted the Aggies, and then they got upsetted by Northern Illinois of all teams last week, at home. So
hold on now. It's the number 25 ranked team in the nation now.
Okay. Well, okay.
Whoa.
Yeah, and we're
Big
week
whoop.
2. Yeah, we're week 2. So, but Notre Dame, they play Purdue this week. It's going to be at Purdue. They should win. It should be a nice bounce back game for them, but I almost feel like that this might be a trap game. Am I wrong in that?
No, I don't think so. I think Notre Dame's going to beat the brakes off them. The problem with Notre Dame is every year they lose the game they're not supposed to, and the coach is okay with it. And that's a huge problem if you're a Notre Dame fan and your expectations are up here. But every year they do it. And he's like, well, we've been in this position before. We got to pull it together. We got to blah, blah, blah. You shouldn't lose to Northern Illinois. You shouldn't pay somebody $1.4 million to come beat you at home, first of all. But I feel like they're going to rally and get it back. I mean, that defense, the secondary, it's still the best in college football as a whole. I just don't, man, they're going to come out and they got a lot to prove. I feel like Notre Dame's going to win. I don't want to say, I hate saying that, but yeah, I mean, coming off the loss, and plus coming out of the loss the last 6 times they've won. So they usually play pretty well coming out. So I foresee them winning.
There's something about West Lafayette that I can never forget. Mike Allstott towing his yellow Jeep in the parking lot and having a handle of rum in between my legs because my brothers didn't want to get caught with liquor in the stadium. They're good times. Good times. I'm not going to name any names, but that was a great time. Notre Dame loses 100%. I'm going with the Boilermakers. Run the train, buddy. Get, Pete out there with the sledgehammer and just start knocking away at the leprechaun. The run game and defense for Notre Dame is where they're key. You watch anything Leonard has thrown, it's not that great. Deep ball's a little sketch. You watch their defense, it's only in the secondary. If they can stop the pass for the Boilermakers, it's going to be a pain for Purdue. But if Purdue can rely on their run like they did with Mostert and everyone else before him, they really only had passers with Breeze, Orton. I mean, even O'Connell had probably, I think, a record in passing with them, but it wasn't crazy, and they still ended up upsetting a few people. I think it was Ohio State in O'Connell's second year. So I wouldn't count Purdue out in this game. They're playing at home. I love me some West Lafayette Purdue football. I had Notre Dame Avenue sign when we won in South Bend for a long time in my bedroom, courtesy of some older fraternity bros stealing a sign off the street. So I think Notre Dame loses again. I don't think they can be consistent enough on offense to stop a significant amount of run game. Their defense on this, like I said, secondary-wise, they're fantastic. I think they're the best in football. Freeman's done an excellent job in recruiting and portal-wise. But Leonard at offense as their quarterback, if you watch his Duke tape, he gets real lucky and downfield with some big wide receivers. But He's a run first guy. I think it's gonna be a close game, to be honest, but I'd like Purdue in this one.
Scooter, you little party animal, you man. I love the
Being
stories.
like
I
5 or
I
7
love
years
the
old
trip
to
down
handle
memory
rum
lane
is
with
pretty fun.
Scooter. So I have a question for you guys. Because Notre Dame is independent, are they in kind of a must-win situation right now?
Yes.
Yeah, because I mean, to be in the playoffs, you can't lose to Northern Illinois, and that's going to factor in too much, especially at home.
Yeah.
So they kind of are like they really need to run the table, unless college football goes in this crazy thing and there's a bunch of one-loss teams out there, which there's usually not. But they need to win out. I don't think their schedule's strong enough or 2 losses can get them in.
Let me ask this. Would you take a 2-loss Notre Dame or a 2-loss ACC, SEC, Big 10, or Big 12 team?
Not ACC, because there is only one team I think worthy of the playoffs in there, and that's Miami. Not being a Miami. I mean, just I don't think anybody else is good enough. Yeah, probably an SEC team. There's some SEC teams that they're deep enough with 2 losses that I would put them in.
Hands down, Big 10 and SEC with 2 losses over Notre Dame. I don't care. Big 12 2-loss team, depending on strength of schedule and where those losses were, I would argue that. ACC, I think you could probably give them the nod.
Yeah.
That's just because the ACC just kind of decided to flip upside down.
Yeah, fair enough. Should be interesting though. They are in a predicament though where they should win the rest of their games. And honestly, looking at their schedule, I mean they should win out. They have a couple of they got Louisville. Watch out, Florida State.
But they just lost to NIU,
right, exactly.
man.
But they do finish the year off with USC. So kind of depending on where that team is at, that might be a hard game for them to win there at the end of the year. But should be interesting. I like Purdue. I'm going to go with Scooter. I like Purdue this game. I like the underdog. Honestly, I just don't like Notre Dame. I don't like them either. They're like the Dallas Cowboys of college football, I feel like it's
overrated since the 90s, you're right.
Yeah, it's like it's our year and then nothing. So it's like, okay, so let's go to a team that had a big upset last week against Florida State, and that was Boston College. They played Mizzou this weekend. That should be just an interesting game. I like this game. These two teams, they're gritty, they're hard nosed, they can win games for sure. But where do you guys see this game going? And what are some key matchups that you're looking for this weekend?
Complete blowout by Mizzou. Like, I understand you got Bill O'Brien and Boston College, and their defense looks pretty decent. But they're very heavy on the run game. And what you really have to kind of understand with the SEC defenses is, like, if you can't run between the tackles, you're going to lose that game. And Mizzou's looking very clean. They looked very clean last year. I know they had a couple losses. I understand we played, Alabama and everybody else, but Mizzou is looking like that Sith Lord of the West right now. They're going to come in, they're going to upset people, they're going to piss a lot of teams off, and I think they still end up in the top 10. Like, they did not change much from last year. Let's keep that in mind. And they have a very good culture in the coaching staff. I think Boston College got their hype. I think they still can upset some dudes in the ACC, but I do not think they compete with SEC teams. I'm just going to be very clear with that. I think Mizzou wins very handedly.
It's going to be interesting. I don't think Bill O'Brien allows that, I don't want to say hangover from their big win, just because I think he doesn't let them let up. It's going to be a very interesting game. Like, because Mizzou has in past years have come out ranked, and then they win, and then they lose a couple games, and then some years they just fade off. But I mean, they have a really good team this year. I'm interested. Like, are they gonna with Castellanos? Are they gonna contain him at quarterback with BC? They got Ward had a big game last week. So, but like Scooter said, man, it is an SEC team that's gonna be ready to play. So, I mean, when you're a team, you're the underdog. You don't have anything to lose. Like, just go let it all hang out. You're supposed to lose. They're supposed to lose this game. I mean, they're a 76% chance they're going to lose according to the odds maker. So, man, go out there and just throw everything against the wind. I wouldn't be surprised you don't see some trick plays. Yeah, I mean, what's BC got to lose at this point? They're expected to lose big, so we'll see if Mizzou doesn't get caught up in that trap. I don't think they will. I think after they see them play last week against Florida State, I know Florida State's having the rough year, but Bill O'Brien's got that team in a good headspace. You know, he's got the NFL coaches there. They're not going to let them let up. So should be a good game. I'm definitely going to be watching it.
Mizzou definitely doesn't not need to go into this weekend flat-footed because they can get caught. I think I do like Mizzou though as well. I think I'm with you guys. I don't see SEC going down to Boston College. But yeah, before we wrap up this episode, I do have one question for you guys. There is a team out there right now that is looking very good, and this last weekend, yes, Miami Hurricanes is looking good. We all know that, but that is not the team that I am talking about. As much as I love Cam Ward and everything else like that, but there is a team out there right now where their quarterback is in the running for Heisman, and that is the Texas Longhorns. Outside of Georgia, are they the best team in the nation right now?
We're gonna find out in the playoffs because they're gonna meet.
They just went into Michigan. I understand Michigan isn't the same Michigan from last year, but they just went into Michigan and absolutely curb stomped them, and which is not an easy environment to do. And they look great.
So if I was Ohio State and I watched that game, I'd be very worried. Especially when you know you're probably going to play Texas eventually in the playoff. And if you watch that game, it was like watching an older brother beat up on the younger brother. That's just how it was.
I mean, we're gonna find out in a month. They play in a month, October 19th. It's Texas, Texas, Georgia, and I believe it's in Texas. So we're going to find out. That is going to be, God, I hope that game doesn't disappoint. But that should be a heavyweight matchup. And they'll both make the playoffs. I have Texas as the best team in the SEC. Just overall, they're just – I haven't found a weakness in that team yet. But Georgia really doesn't have one either. And they'll have Travis Etienne's brother back as well. So starting next week, man, it's going to be a hell of a game.
What you do have though is two very different Saban coaches. Sarkisian with the offense, Kirby Smart with that defense.
Yeah.
Who's the better Saban tree coach? Will be week 10. Georgia versus Texas in Texas. Then it's going to be, I don't know if I'm going to be, if I am busy that weekend, it's because I'm watching the game. But Texas looks very clean. Georgia, I think, can clean up a few things on defense. But the way Texas handled Michigan in Ann Arbor on top of that, that just seemed very clean, very methodical, very deliberate. And when you get that type of play earlier on, and you can keep it consistent, who knows? If Texas wins the SEC in their very first year, I swear we're never going to hear the end of it from Georgia fans and Alabama fans to the end of the time that they don't belong in the SEC. I'm sorry, but you lost, right? Oklahoma's not winning the SEC. We understand that. But Texas right now looks, if there's their time, other than when the Vince Young era, right? It might be this one. Might be this year.
What Georgia has in their advantage is the weekend before, Texas has to go to Norman and play Oklahoma. So they got that big rivalry game with the Red River rivalry. And then Georgia has Mississippi State, which will be a tough game, but it's not Oklahoma, who should be ranked and is a good football team. So that's a tough test for Texas. Yeah, Oklahoma, and then, bam, the Georgia Bulldogs come running.
Should be a great test. Should be a great heavyweight match. What do you got, Carlos?
Did you see the last time they played, that Bevo, the Longhorn, went after Uga, and they had to take Uga because the Longhorn went after everybody. So let's see if the Uga gets his payback.
We should have a cage match at halftime in the middle of the field.
That'll last about 3 seconds, man.
Yeah,
you see the horns on that thing?
Yeah, the Darwin effect will definitely come into play there.
Oh man! And when is that date? What you said?
October 19th.
October 19th. Mark your calendars. That should be a fantastic matchup between the Georgia Bulldogs and the Texas Longhorns, which look like both of the two best teams in the nation, or two of the better teams in the nation for sure. So definitely mark your calendars for that. But if you are still rocking with us all the way up until here, we definitely appreciate you guys. You guys are the true MVPs. Go ahead and do us a favor. Hit that like, hit that subscribe button. We're trying to continue to build and grow this channel as we continue on this college football season. We're going to be bringing you all of the stats, all of the storylines, all of the heartbreaks, all of the celebrations, everything that comes with college football. You're going to find it right here with the Beardzone. So, but do us a favor, also follow us on our social medias. We are on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and we are on X. You can find us all and find the links to those social media platforms down in the description below. And until next week.
I got one question for Carlos.
Ooh.
How are you feeling right now? Is it more this or is it more this?
It's always this. And I look forward to seeing them in the playoffs as we win.
I was going to say go Bulls because we play you guys next.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not too worried about that one.
Upset alert.
No, I'm not worried about that one.
We'll see. But yes, until next time, Beardzone.